I always believed my family was perfect. A model husband, a sweet daughter, a house filled with laughter. Daniel was the kind of man other women envied, attentive, successful, always knowing exactly what to say. Our daughter, Sophie, was 13 years old, the kind of child who still hugged me goodnight without embarrassment. We were the picture on the Christmas card, the family everyone admired, but perfection, I've learned, is just another word for lie. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March when my world cracked open. I had left work early, a migraine that wouldn't quit. I drove home through streets I knew by heart, never imagining that in 20 minutes my entire existence would become unrecognizable. The house was quiet when I opened the front door. Too quiet. Daniel's car was in the driveway, which was strange for 2 o'clock on a Tuesday. Then I heard it. Laughter, low and intimate, coming from upstairs. My feet moved before my brain could catch up. The bedroom door, our bedroom door, was half open, and there they were, my husband, Rosa, our housekeeper, in our bed, in the sheets I had changed that very morning. Daniel saw me first. His face went white, then red, cycling through emotions like a broken traffic light. Rosa pulled the sheet up to her chin, her dark eyes wide with something that looked almost like relief. Then I heard a small sound behind me, a gasp. Sophie, my daughter, stood in the hallway, her backpack still on her shoulders. And as our eyes met, I expected to see shock, horror, but that's not what I saw. Instead, Sophie's face showed something far worse. Resignation, sadness, and underneath it all, a knowledge that had clearly been there for a very long time. She knew. Sophie walked toward me slowly, tears streaming down her face. Her lips trembled as she reached for my hand, and when she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Mom. I already knew. Those 4 words were a silent knife. My 13-year-old daughter had been carrying this secret. How long? Days? Weeks? Months? Tell her, Sophie said suddenly, her voice stronger. Tell her everything, Dad. She deserves to know. Everything? What else could there possibly be? We grew up together, Daniel finally said, his voice hollow. Rosa and I, in the same neighborhood in Phoenix. We went to the same high school. We were in love once. Rosa had been working for us for 5 years. 5 years of cooking our meals, cleaning our home, smiling at me every morning while harboring this secret. There's more, Sophie whispered. We have a son, Rosa said suddenly, her voice thick with tears. Daniel and I, he is 10 years old. His name is Miguel. The room tilted. 10 years old. Daniel and I had been married for 14 years, which meant he was seeing her while we were married. He got her pregnant while we were married. How long have you known? I asked Sophie. She bit her lip. 6 months. I saw a text message on Dad's phone. I confronted him and he told me everything. He made me promise not to tell you. He said it would destroy the family. 6 months. My daughter had carried this secret for 6 months. Before I continue, I need you to do something for me. Tell me in the comments which country you're watching this from. It helps keep this community alive. And right now, I need to know I'm not alone in this darkness. But what I didn't know then, what none of them knew, was that this was not my ending. It was only the beginning. I threw Daniel out that same night. Rosa was fired immediately, but it was Sophie who haunted me most during those first 72 hours. On the 3rd night, she came to my bedroom. Mom, can we talk? She sat on the edge of the bed. I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you every single day. But Dad said if you knew, you'd divorce him, and then our family would be broken. He said Miguel needed him, that the little boy didn't have much, and Dad was trying to support them both. He made it sound like he was doing something noble. Noble. As if there was anything noble about lies and making a child complicit in your infidelity. He said Rosa was struggling. Sophie continued. That she'd reconnected with him at a high school reunion years ago, and one thing led to another. He said it meant nothing, that you were his real wife, his real family. But she's been in our house for 5 years, I said quietly. He brought his former girlfriend into our home. That's not a mistake. That's many, many choices made every single day. Have you ever felt trapped by a secret? Have you ever held something inside that poisoned you a little more each day? Tell me in the comments. Over the following weeks, I hired a private investigator named Marcus. What he discovered made those first revelations seem almost quaint. Daniel hadn't just been supporting Miguel. He'd rented an apartment across town where Rosa and Miguel lived full-time. She only came to our house to work, to maintain the facade. The business trips to Dallas. Many were actually long weekends at the apartment across town, playing father to Miguel while I believed he was closing deals. Marcus showed me photographs. Daniel at a park with a small boy on his shoulders. Daniel at Miguel's school play. Daniel at birthday parties I knew nothing about. Inside the folders were financial records, bank statements showing regular transfers to Rosa's account, credit card statements showing purchases at children's stores. Daniel had been spending tens of thousands supporting this second family, while I carefully budgeted our household expenses. But the detail that broke something fundamental inside me was the joint bank account. Daniel and Rosa had a joint bank account, opened 7 years ago. They were financially intertwined, partners in a way that spoke of commitment and planning. In my experience, Marcus said gently, this level of deception, this is a man who built a second life with the same care most people give to one. That night I sat Sophie down and told her everything I'd learned. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I saw him once, Miguel. I'd followed Dad one day after school. I needed to see if it was real. What was he like? He looked like Dad, Sophie said softly. Same eyes, same smile, and Dad was laughing, Mom. Really laughing, in this way I hadn't seen him laugh in a long time. The jealousy that surged through me was shocking. Not just over Rosa, but over this child who got pieces of my husband that I thought belonged solely to our family. And somewhere, deep in the darkest part of my heart, a cold, hard thought began to form. If Daniel could plan so carefully for his double life, then I could plan too. But my plan wouldn't be about building. It would be about dismantling everything he'd so carefully constructed. They thought I was broken. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Grief has many faces. There's the obvious one, the tears, the sleepless nights. But there's another face of grief, one that's quieter and far more dangerous. It's cold, calculating, patient. Daniel had moved into the apartment with Rosa and Miguel within 2 weeks. Sophie told me this over dinner one night, her voice carefully neutral. He called Sophie every day, wanted to see her, explain his side of things. What do you want to do? I asked her. I don't know. He's still my dad. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Meanwhile, my sessions with Marcus had evolved beyond information gathering. Now we were building something else, a comprehensive dossier of Daniel's deception. Daniel worked for Hartman and Associates, a prestigious financial consulting firm where image was everything. He was a partner, his face on the company website. He gave speeches about corporate ethics, wrote articles about integrity in business. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been my life. I'd met Daniel's boss, Richard Hartman, several times. He was old school, conservative, the kind of man who valued reputation above almost everything else. I started doing research into Hartman and Associates' client list, their corporate values, their recently announced initiative on ethical leadership in modern business. It was perfect. But I wasn't ready to act yet. Revenge requires patience. Strike too soon, and the impact is diluted. So I played my part. the grieving wife, trying to hold things together. I was cordial when Daniel called about Sophie, professional when we discussed logistics. "You're being very reasonable about all this," Daniel said one evening when picking up boxes. "Sophie needs stability," I told him. "Fighting won't help anyone." He looked relieved, grateful even. After he left, Sophie found me in the kitchen. "You're acting weird," she said. "What do you mean?" "Too calm, too nice to Dad." "Smart girl." "I'm trying to move forward," I said carefully. "Anger doesn't change what happened." "But aren't you angry?" "Of course I'm angry. Furious. Devastated. But sitting around being angry doesn't accomplish anything." Sophie studied me. "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to rebuild our lives," I said, which was true. What I didn't say was that rebuilding sometimes requires demolition first. At work, I threw myself into projects with renewed focus. My boss, Jennifer, offered support, references for lawyers, recommendations for therapists. Her kindness made me want to cry, but I held it together. I was holding everything together with such force that sometimes I wondered if I'd forgotten how to fall apart. That night I couldn't sleep. I thought about Miguel, this 10-year-old boy who shared Sophie's father, who had grown up in the shadow of a secret. I wondered if he knew about me, if Rosa had told him about his father's other family. The more I learned, the more complicated the story became, and complications could be useful. Marcus called it unhealthy. "You're spending a lot of time on this. I'm concerned you're not processing the grief." "I'll process later," I told him. "Right now I need to understand." Daniel had spent years constructing his double life, brick by brick, lie by lie. He'd forgotten something, though. Every building has a foundation, and foundations can crumble, can be deliberately undermined by someone patient enough to dig. I was very patient, and I was digging. The invitation arrived on elegant cream cardstock. The Hartman and Associates annual charity gala, black tie, spouses and partners encouraged. I stared at it for a long time. In previous years, I'd attended this event on Daniel's arm, playing the role of the supportive wife. The gala was 3 weeks away, 3 weeks to decide if I was ready. I called Marcus. "Can you be there? Outside. I need someone documenting what happens." "What's going to happen?" "I'm not entirely sure yet," I said, which was only partially true. The next day, I did something unexpected. I called Rosa. "It's me," I said. "We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you." "Maybe not, but I have things to say to you. Meet me at the coffee shop on Maple Street, tomorrow, noon, because Daniel's been lying to you too, and I think you deserve to know how much." She came. At 12:03, Rosa walked in, looking older and worn down. "Thank you for coming," I said. "What do you want?" "The truth. Tell me how it started. All of it." For a moment I thought she'd refuse, but then something in her face shifted. "We met when we were 15 at Roosevelt High School," she began. "Daniel and I fell in love. But after graduation, he went to college out of state, and I stayed here. Life happened. Years passed. I got married, had a hard life. Then my husband left me when I was pregnant with Miguel, and I was alone with no support. I hadn't known any of this. I ran into Daniel at our 10-year high school reunion, just looking for a friendly face. He was married to you by then, successful, everything I wasn't. But when we started talking, all those old feelings came back." "So you had an affair?" "Yes, one night at the reunion. But I got pregnant with Miguel. I told Daniel. He insisted on being involved, on supporting us." "And you agreed to come work in his house?" I was desperate, working 2 jobs, barely making rent. Daniel offered me steady income, health insurance, a way to give Miguel a better life. I took it. We sat in silence. "Did you know about the joint bank account?" I asked. Her face went pale. "What account?" I showed her the statements. Her hands shook. "I didn't know about this," she whispered. "He said the transfers came from his personal savings." "It's a joint account with both your names, which means legally you're financially connected to him. If there are legal issues, tax problems, you're implicated." "He used you," I said softly. "Used both of us. Made me think I had a faithful husband. Made you think you were special when really you were just convenient." "What are you going to do?" she asked finally. "I'm going to tell the truth. At the gala in 3 weeks, Daniel is receiving the Ethical Leadership Award. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who they're honoring." I left her sitting there, probably replaying every interaction with Daniel through this new lens. The night before the gala, Daniel called. "I heard you're coming tomorrow. I think it's inappropriate. I have every right to attend. I'm still legally your wife, and I'd hate to miss your big moment." "Don't do anything you'll regret," he warned. "Oh, Daniel, the only thing I regret is not seeing you clearly sooner." The day arrived. I dressed in a deep red dress that made me look powerful. Sophie hugged me before I left. "Whatever you're going to do," she whispered, "make it count." The hotel ballroom was exactly as I remembered. I spotted Daniel immediately, standing with Richard Hartman and several senior partners. The ceremony began. Then Richard took the stage. "Our Ethical Leadership Award goes to someone who embodies our firm's values, a man who has shown unwavering commitment to his family, his clients, and his principles. Daniel Mitchell." Applause filled the room. Daniel stood, smiling, making his way to the stage. He never made it, because I stood up. "I object," I said clearly. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. "There's something everyone should know about the man you're about to honor," I said, walking toward the stage. "About his commitment to family, about his integrity." "This is not appropriate," Daniel said. "Neither is having a secret family. Neither is financial fraud. Neither is lying to everyone in this room for over 10 years. The whispers started. Phones came out. "My husband has a second family, a 10-year-old son he's been hiding, a woman he's been supporting financially while telling me we needed to budget carefully. And he's been using company resources, expense accounts, travel budgets to maintain his double life." I held up the folder. "I have proof. Receipts, photographs, financial records, all documented." Richard Hartman's face turned thunderous. "Daniel? Is this true?" Daniel stood frozen. The room erupted in chaos. The gala dissolved into chaos. Richard Hartman pulled Daniel off to a side room. Guests clustered in groups, whispering, their phones glowing. I stood in the center, holding my evidence, feeling strangely calm. Marcus appeared at my elbow. "I got everything, the whole confrontation. It's all documented." "Good," I said. Richard emerged, looking like he'd aged 10 years. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'd like to see your documentation." I handed him the folder. He flipped through it, his mouth getting tighter with each page. "If even half of this is true?" "It's all true, every word." Richard looked at Daniel with disgust. "We'll be conducting a full audit. You're suspended pending investigation." Daniel turned to me, his eyes blazing. "You've destroyed everything." "No, you did that. I just made sure everyone else could see it too." The next morning I called Rosa. "You lied to me about some things. The timeline doesn't add up." I was trying to make it sound less bad. "I don't care, but you might want to get a lawyer. Those financial records with your name, they're about to get very public." Over the next week, legal activity exploded. I filed for divorce, demanding full disclosure of all assets. My lawyer smiled when she saw the documentation. "This is gold. Hidden assets in a divorce proceeding. The judge will not be happy." But I wasn't done yet. I contacted the IRS about the offshore account that had never been properly reported, which meant Daniel wasn't just a liar. He was a tax evader. Federal agents showed up at Hartman and Associates at Daniel's apartment at the bank. They seized records, computers, files. Daniel called me frantic. "What have you done? The IRS? Federal charges? Do you want me to go to prison?" "I want you to face consequences," I said calmly. "Something you've avoided your entire adult life. Think about Sophie." "I am thinking about Sophie. I'm teaching her that actions have consequences, that integrity matters. Please, I'm begging you." "No, you made your choices. Now live with them." Over the next month, Daniel's life continued its spectacular unraveling. Hartman and Associates fired him after their audit revealed misuse of client entertainment budgets. The IRS investigation expanded. The offshore account contained money from questionable business deals. His professional reputation was toxic. No other firm would touch him. Rosa and Miguel moved to Nevada to live with her sister, leaving Daniel truly alone. Sophie stopped taking his calls, not because I asked her to, but because she'd made her own choice. "Is this wrong?" she asked me one night. "That I don't want to talk to him?" "No. You get to decide what kind of relationship you want. Forgiveness and trust have to be earned. Have you ever cut someone toxic out of your life? Tell me in the comments. These decisions are never easy, but sometimes necessary." 6 weeks after the gala, I signed the final divorce papers. Daniel hadn't contested anything. I got the house, full custody of Sophie, 2/3 of all marital assets. The final sum was just over $1.8 million. "That's it then," my lawyer said. "You're free." Free. The word felt strange. That night, Sophie and I had dinner at home. "Mom, are you happy?" I considered the question. "I'm getting there, day by day." She hugged me. The revenge had been satisfying. But this, having my daughter's arms around me, knowing we'd survived, this was what actually mattered. Tomorrow, the Attorney General's office would receive an anonymous package containing every piece of evidence about Daniel's financial crimes. Marcus had looked at me with concern. "This could send him to prison." "Yes. And you're okay with that?" "He had a choice at every step. To be honest, to come clean. I'm not sending him to prison. His choices are." They thought I was broken. They had no idea how strong broken things can become. The morning the Attorney General received the package, I was in a meeting when my phone buzzed. Former Hartman and Associates partner arrested on federal fraud charges. I didn't smile, just felt a quiet sense of completion. The article detailed everything: offshore accounts, tax evasion, misuse of company funds. Federal prosecutors were seeking 15 to 20 years. My boss pulled me aside. "That's your ex-husband, did you?" "I provided evidence to authorities about crimes I discovered," I said carefully. It seemed like the responsible thing to do. She nodded slowly. "You're handling this with remarkable grace." Grace is just anger that's learned patience. That evening, Daniel called from jail. "You did this. You're destroying me." "No, Daniel. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't keep destroying everyone around you. I'll lose everything, my career, my freedom, my children. You already lost those things the moment you chose lies over truth. How can you be so cold? I loved you." "No, you loved the idea of me, the perfect wife who asked no questions. You never loved me enough to be honest, and that's not love at all. Please, if you ever cared about me." Our family ended the day you decided one wasn't enough. Goodbye, Daniel. I hung up and blocked his number. Sophie came downstairs ready for school. She'd seen the news. "People are asking me about Dad." "What do you tell them?" "The truth, that he made choices and choices have consequences." She paused. "I know Dad messed up. I know he's going to prison probably. And yeah, it sucks. But I also know you and I are going to be fine. When had my daughter become so wise? The trial was set for 6 months away. Daniel's lawyers tried every trick, but the evidence was too solid. Daniel Mitchell was convicted on 14 counts of fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering. The judge sentenced him to 18 years in federal prison. 18 years. Some people called me cruel, said I'd gone too far. But I knew something they didn't. This wasn't just about punishing Daniel. It was about sending a message. Your pain matters. Your truth matters. And the people who hurt you don't get to walk away consequence-free. 2 weeks after sentencing, I received a letter from prison. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I understand now what I did. Prison gives you time to see yourself clearly. I was a coward. I wanted everything without the courage to choose or the integrity to be honest. You were braver than I ever was. Sophie is turning into a remarkable young woman because of you. I'm sorry doesn't cover it, but I am truly sorry. I read it twice, then put it in a drawer. Not in the trash, but not on display either, just somewhere in between. At work, I threw myself into my new role as senior vice president. I was good at my job, better than I'd realized when I was playing the role of Daniel's wife. Sophie flourished, made new friends, joined debate team, started talking about colleges and futures that had nothing to do with her father's mistakes. One evening, she showed me her laptop. I'd been writing about everything that happened. I thought maybe other kids dealing with family stuff might want to read it. I read her essay. It was raw, honest, surprisingly mature. This is beautiful. Can I post it online? Yes, absolutely yes. She published it on a blog for children of divorce. Within a week, it had thousands of views, hundreds of comments saying thank you, saying me too. My daughter taking her pain and transforming it into something that helped others. That's when I knew we'd won. Not against Daniel, but against the lies, against the shame. Have you ever transformed your pain into purpose? Share your story in the comments. 2 years after the gala, I went on my first date. A colleague named Michael, kind, funny, and most importantly, honest. We met for coffee, talked for 3 hours. He asked if he could see me again. I'm not sure I'm ready, I admitted. That's okay, I'm patient. 3 months later, I trusted him enough to tell him the full story. That must have been incredibly hard, he said without judgment. It was, but it also made me stronger. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. I didn't know if we'd last, but I was trying, and trying was enough. Daniel's name occasionally appeared in articles about white-collar crime. He became a cautionary tale. I didn't take pleasure in his downfall anymore, just felt done. I'd taken back everything he'd stolen, my security, my dignity, my right to truth. And I'd discovered something Daniel never had. Integrity isn't just about being honest with others. It's about being honest with yourself. Daniel had spent his life running from that honesty. I'd learned to stare directly into the mirror, even when what I saw wasn't pretty, and that made all the difference. 5 years after the gala, I stood before 300 women at a conference on resilience and recovery from trauma. People always ask me if I regret it, I said. If I regret exposing my ex-husband so publicly, if I think I went too far. I paused. My answer is always the same. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret doing it. Sophie sat in the front row, now 18 and preparing for college. She smiled at me, encouraging. For years, I believed being a good wife meant being accommodating, trusting, never questioning. I thought that's what love looked like. I clicked to the next slide, a photo of me from before. Smiling at a party, Daniel's arm around me. I looked happy. But now I could see how tired my eyes were, how forced my smile. But that woman wasn't happy. She was performing happiness. There's a difference. Over the next hour, I shared the full story. Not to shame Daniel, but to show these women that survival was possible, that speaking truth to power mattered. After the presentation, a young woman approached me. "My fiancé is lying to me," she whispered. "I know he is, but I'm scared to confront him, scared of being alone." I took her hands. Being alone is temporary. Being trapped in a lie is forever. Which scares you more? I don't know how to be as strong as you. I wasn't strong. I was terrified every single day. But I did it anyway. That's what courage is. Later, driving home with Sophie, we were quiet. Then she said, "Dad wrote to me again." This happened occasionally. Letters from prison. What did he say? That he's sorry, that he loves me, that he wishes he could undo everything. Do you think he means it? I think he means it when he writes it. Whether he'd act differently if given the chance, I don't know. Are you ever going to forgive him? I've forgiven him for me, not for him. I've let go of the anger because carrying it was hurting me. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or trusting again. I think I might visit him next month, before college. My first instinct was to protest, but I swallowed it. Why? Because I want to tell him face to face what he took from me, and I want to hear what he says. Do you want me to come? No, I need to do this alone. My daughter. So brave. The night before Sophie's college move-in, we sat in her room surrounded by boxes. Do you think you'll ever get married again? To Michael? Michael, the man I'd been dating for 3 years. Patient, kind, honest. Maybe someday. But I'm not in a hurry. Marriage isn't the goal anymore. Happiness is, honesty is, peace is. I like him. He's real. After Dad, I was worried you'd pick someone who seemed perfect. But Michael just admits when he's wrong. That's better than perfect. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. The next morning, we loaded her car and drove to her university. After setting up her room and saying goodbye, I drove home alone. The house felt quiet with change. I poured wine and sat on the back porch, looking at the garden I'd restored over 5 years. The flowers I'd planted after the divorce were in full bloom. This was my space, my sanctuary, built from the ruins of a false marriage. My phone buzzed. A message from Rosa. Miguel graduates high school next week. Got a full scholarship to Arizona State for engineering. Thought you should know. The college fund you set up changed his life. I smiled. That's wonderful. Congratulations to him. Thank you for everything, for being bigger than the situation. The doorbell rang. Michael, arriving for dinner. How's the empty nest? Strange, but good strange. We made dinner together, moving easily in the kitchen. No secrets between us, just 2 people choosing to try again with eyes wide open. After dinner, he pulled out a small box. Before you panic, it's not that. Not yet. Inside was a key. To my apartment. I want you to have a space there, to know you're always welcome. Thank you for letting me in, he said, for trusting me enough to try. That night I sat down to write. Something I'd been thinking about for months. A book. My story. Not for revenge, but for healing. For every woman who'd ever discovered betrayal and wondered if she'd survive. I titled it, The Perfect Lie, a memoir of betrayal, revenge, and rebuilding. And I began to write. 6 months later, my book was published. It became a bestseller within 3 weeks. Women wrote to me from around the world, thanking me, sharing their own stories, telling me I'd given them courage. Sophie read it and cried. I'm so proud of you, Mom. Michael read it and held me. You're remarkable. One day I received a letter forwarded through my publisher, Prison Stationery. I read your book. Every word felt like looking in a mirror and finally seeing the truth. I destroyed the most precious things in my life because I was too much of a coward to choose. Too selfish, to be honest. I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that your book is being passed around here, and it's changing conversations. Men are starting to understand the real cost of their deceptions. Thank you for telling the truth. Even when it destroyed me, you became the person I pretended to be. Daniel, I folded the letter and filed it away. Standing in my garden that evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, I thought about the journey from that terrible Tuesday afternoon to this moment of peace. The betrayal had nearly broken me. The revenge had consumed me for a time. But the healing, that had transformed me. I'd learned that strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up, about refusing to let someone else's lies define your truth. I'd learned that forgiveness is something you do for yourself, not for the person who hurt you. I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so completely, authentically yourself that their opinion becomes irrelevant. Most importantly, I'd learned that you can build something beautiful from ruins, that pain can become purpose, that the woman staring back at me in the mirror, scarred but whole, wary but hopeful, was someone I'd fought hard to become, and she was worth fighting for. The lesson isn't that revenge is always right. It's that truth always matters, that you have the right to protect yourself, to demand honesty, to refuse to be complicit in your own betrayal. Consequences aren't cruelty, they're accountability, and accountability is what separates those who learn from those who simply repeat their mistakes with new victims. Daniel got 18 years in prison, but I got something far more valuable. I got my life back. If this story touched you, moved you, or made you think about your own journey through betrayal and healing, I want to hear from you. Subscribe to this channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story matters. Your voice deserves to be heard. Together we create a community where truth isn't shameful, it's powerful. And power, my friends, belongs to those brave enough to claim it.